Hello, everyone. I am Ryan Clifton Bolin. Thank you for joining me. Free speech is one of the fundamental constitutional rights of all Americans, regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of your religious beliefs. In America, you, according to the Constitution, have the right to speak your mind, to speak your opinion, to agree, to disagree, to agree, to disagree, you understand. And that is one of our fundamental rights, a right that quite a few countries outside have not been given. However, as we all know, that the attack against free speech has been an intensive effort by the radical far left to silence the mouths of conservative voices. It is not a conspiracy theory that conservatives are being silenced on platforms like Twitter, thank God for Elon Musk taking over, and Facebook and other social media platforms. It is no secret. The left can try to deny it all day, and everyone, those who know the facts, they know that that is just not, that the idea of conservatives being censored is an absolute truth. They're not making it up in their mind. Having said that, it is a good thing to hear that there are politicians that are trying to fight back to regain the freedom of speech, if you will. And I hate to use the term regain the freedom of speech, because the freedom of speech has not completely been censored in our country, thank God, as of this point, not yet at least. And I think in part it's because we have not only a bevy of conservatives and even people registered as Democrats who believe in freedom of speech, opposing this attack against free speech. But we have politicians such as Rand Paul, who is a Republican senator, who stated that he is going to try his best to fight and basically cancel out this so-called misinformation or ministry of truth that was created by the Biden administration. So let's get right into that. Let's see what he has to say, and we're going to analyze this article here. And the article starts off, Monday during an appearance on FNC's Jesse Waters Primetime, Senator Rand Paul said he was working with lawmakers to dissolve Biden's so-called Disinformation Governance Board. The Kentucky Republican lawmaker said he opposed policing news organizations and argued determinations about disinformation should be left up to the public. I totally agree. That should be left up to the public, but I'm going to get into my reasonings for that a little later. We're going to shut it down, he said, and I'm busily getting signatures from other senators. There's a way that we can get it onto the calendar, and there's perhaps a way we can actually get a vote. It's not very easy when the Democrats control things, but I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get a vote to defund this organization. Boy, is it not with amazement you see how far that they have come from Kennedy's Democratic Party. This is not your grandfather's Democratic Party anymore. So much for the marketplace of ideas. They have decided they are going to determine what disinformation is. But my point to Mayor Koss was this, Paul continued. We have a $32 million Mueller investigation to see if there is collusion between Russia and Trump. There wasn't any. And yet the Steele dossier upon which they based this all on, I hope I pronounced that right, y'all. Correct me in the comment box if I didn't, which was given to Steele by Russians, it was Russian disinformation. If they can't admit that that's disinformation, it was propagated by CNN for years and years. If they can't admit that, how could they possibly do the job of policing disinformation? Good point. If you can't, this is me obviously, if you can't decipher that was disinformation, then how are you going to decipher disinformation among other voices here in America? I believe they have an agenda, but we're going to go on. Now, I don't think it's a job that you could possibly do. So even if you could, and they admitted that it was disinformation, I would be against policing CNN. I agree. People can turn the channel when they see that CNN doesn't care about the truth. But I would not police CNN. I'm against policing any news organization. The public can figure this out. End of the article, end of his words. Let's get right into this. I totally agree with Rand Paul here. I don't know much about him in terms of a senator or so forth, or I don't know much about his political history or anything like that. I know obviously he's a Republican. But one of my former co-workers told me about him and said that he's real. He's the real thing. He's not a fake Republican. He's not a rhino. He's the real deal. But he's just one among perhaps a small minority of true Republicans and true conservative Republicans, if you will, that really are trying to fight for the American people. Okay. Now, having said that, I totally agree with his assessment. This whole disinformation ministry of truth thing is an oxymoron, really. Because first of all, well, I wouldn't even say an oxymoron, but I would say a big lie. How about that? Because first of all, the far left radical liberals are putting themselves in a position to where they claim to have absolute truth. Anything that opposes their perspective or opposes their political viewpoints, they want to censor. And when you have the federal government trying to come in and censor other voices, then you have a problem. It's different when a privately owned organization censors people's voices, because after all, it's privately owned and technically they have a right to do that. They're paying for it. It's their right to say who can say something and who can't. It's hated. I hate it. But they do have a right to do that because it's privately owned. But when you have even though people are fighting against that, excuse me, but when you have the federal government coming in and doing the very thing that the Constitution forbids us from doing, which is barring people's freedom of speech, then you have a problem. And part of this is because of the people in administration. The Biden administration when Obama was in office, I wasn't even remotely involved in politics. I knew very little of anything about politics. I mean, I didn't care. I just wanted to do my little thing. But he was in office for 8 years. And I didn't pay any attention to freedom of speech or any of the constitutional rights that I took for granted at that time. It wasn't until Donald Trump got elected that my eyes began to open and I began to buy books on what the Democratic Party was really all about, what the past Democratic Party was really all about, and what I think they are today still, and what the Republican Party was actually all about. But nevertheless, having said all of that, I didn't get involved in politics in any shape, form, or way. But it wasn't until later on that my eyes began to open and I began to push towards trying to educate myself in this whole idea of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to be whatever you want to be. As Rand Paul said, this is not the Democrats of Kennedy's time. You got to ask yourself a question. This is what I ask. Why is it the radical left is so adamant about silencing opposing voices or rather opinions and viewpoints that conflict with their opinion or viewpoint or oppose their opinion or viewpoint or political view? Why are they so adamant about trying to censor them? Because that's clearly what the ministry of truth is all about. The ministry of truth is all about saying we the ones have the absolute truth and everyone else does not have absolute truth. We do. Listen to everything that we have to say and reject everyone else. But why are they so adamant about shutting the mouths of others, particularly conservatives? It is because in my assessment, based on my studies and observations and readings, once again, it gets back into the communist concept, but it is my belief that these far left radical politicians and these radical groups want to silence the mouths of opposing views because they don't want people to see the other side. When people are allowed to see and hear the other side, it gives them options. And as Rand Paul said here, I don't believe in censoring anyone. I don't believe in censoring CNN or any of these news sources, which I agree. I don't believe in censoring CNN. I would prefer that they be completely taken off of TV, period. All of them. That's just my opinion. I just can't. They're fear mongers and lie mongers, okay? But I wouldn't want to censor them. And here's the reason why I wouldn't want to censor them. I wouldn't want to censor CNN and all the other leftist organizations for the simple fact that if we are allowed, if conservatives are allowed just as much airtime on the mainstream media as the far left is allowed airtime on the mainstream media, then no, they shouldn't be censored. All voices on both the left and the right should be given equal exposure and equal coverage in the mainstream news. That way, you give the common American individual options on which to choose. But the reason I believe that the far left is trying to censor the voices of the conservatives isn't because what the conservatives are saying are dangerous. That's a straight out lie. It is because it gives millions of people who watch the mainstream news options. It shows them the other side, and it causes people to think, man, maybe these far left policies aren't the best way to go. They're scared of that. They're scared that's going to take power from them. These people have a communist Marxist mindset. They want control. So anything that threatens that level of control, they want to censor it. They want to shut it out. So who's really the perpetrators of disinformation here? As I said in the previous video, who's really the perpetrators of misinformation here? As far as I'm concerned, it isn't the conservatives. It isn't the right. If it is, let me know. Let me know somewhere in the comment box, section, because I don't see it and haven't been seeing it. I'm seeing it from the radical left. I'm seeing it from the Biden administration. I'm seeing it from Twitter. I'm seeing it from Facebook. I'm seeing it from even YouTube. I've had several of my videos taken down when I first started. Two of my videos taken down. I think possible 3. Because of medical misinformation. That's bull crap. It wasn't no medical misinformation. It was simply me reading an article about something that happened. And then I gave my opinion, conservative opinion on it, but it wasn't no medical misinformation. If I'm stating to you the facts, what's they got to do with misinformation or if anything? Nothing. It's just that they don't want people to know. The far left do not want people to know, whether it's the government or whether it's a privately owned social media platform. They're pushing an agenda, in my opinion. It's an evil agenda, and it's based on communism and socialism and Marxism. They want to destroy the country. And that's what I have to say about it. But thank God for people like Rand Paul, who's going to try to attempt to get rid of this so-called Ministry of Truth thing, or attempt to. Now, whether or not he's going to actually be able to do that, no one knows. It's going to be an intensive uphill battle for him. But anything is possible if enough people wake up and smell the coffee, the tea, the cocoa, and everything else. So I just wanted to say that. What do you guys think about what Rand Paul is doing here? Leave your comments in the comment section below. If you like this video, press the like button. Share this video and subscribe. God bless you all, and see you again.